assignment over an influential leader, I immediately thought of Barack Obama. Just an overall overview of Barack Obama as he led up to the presidency is what I'm going to speak about, and then I'm going to conclude. During election time, there was a buzz about this fairly young senator from Illinois. I didn't know who this man was. I kept seeing his name, Barack Obama, and I didn't know who he was. As time went on, it captivated me, this man, that that he could potentially be the first African-American president of the United States. As time progressed, it was clear that this young African-American senator could, in fact, become our next president as time went on. He did not stumble. When he faced adversity, he stayed calm. And that's another trait that I would like to absorb myself. In 2008, history was made. Barack Obama became president, and he's the 44th president of the United States of America. Upon becoming president, President Obama's leadership style was being critiqued over and over and over through the media. Every little thing that he did. Said he's a little too soft, maybe a little too liberal. How's he going to be able to lead this country with that type of leadership style? And there's 3 leadership styles that was classified through many media styles. Transformational leadership was one of the leadership styles that was mentioned about Barack Obama, or was tagged to Barack Obama. As President Obama stimulated interest among many researchers labeled him as a transitional leader. Leadership involves delegating. Transformational leadership involves delegating certain actions for the best results of the country and for everybody as a whole. So as time went on, researchers and professionals in the political field said this transformational leadership is what Barack Obama was wanting to implement into his presidency. And Barack Obama has done that with criticism throughout. But he stimulates interest among followers, generates awareness, guides people towards his vision, and he developed followers of high ability, professionals. He motivates his own colleagues to look beyond their own interest towards those that will benefit others. Barack Obama's leadership inspired me throughout his presidency. Throughout Barack Obama's transformational leadership style, fighting for the middle class mentality has grown supporters, because the middle class is the makeup of most of this country. And with non-believers and politics set aside, most politicians and people admire Barack Obama, even if they don't agree with his agenda. For he's a family man, his relationship with his people, and it generates traits that all leaders need to have. In conclusion, Barack Obama has made a history as a leader. He has become the first African American president of the United States. He has also brought the first African American family to the White House. In my opinion, setting the standard for the younger African American people in this country is a leadership in all itself. And this will go on for many generations. So should we consider Barack Obama a leader? In my opinion, yes, we should. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Uhuru Williams. I'm a historian, and here are some things that you need to know in order to sound smart about Mahatma Gandhi. Mohandas Gandhi was an Indian religious leader who led one of the great mass movements in world history. As a leader, Gandhi used religious principle to inspire people to fight against colonial oppression in India. Although Gandhi's activism is often associated with India, he actually got his start as an activist in South Africa. It was in South Africa that Gandhi came up with the idea of satyagraha, the idea of firmness and truth, which became one of the key underpinnings of nonviolent resistance. When Gandhi returned from South Africa to India, he was committed to winning independence for the Indian people. Gandhi was ultimately successful in inspiring people to act by emphasizing the importance of nonviolent direct action protest. One of Gandhi's most celebrated protests was the Great Salt March of 1930. Between March and April of 1930, thousands of Indians followed Gandhi on this massive protest to demonstrate against British oppression. The march resulted in the arrest of nearly 60,000 people, including Gandhi himself. Although Gandhi's campaign to win independence for India was ultimately successful, the British, in leaving India, decided to partition it into two parts, India and Pakistan. This, Gandhi argued, was not home rule, but he was willing to accept it based on the idea that at least the nations would be free. Gandhi's life tragically came to an end in January of 1948 at the hands of a Hindu assassin. More than 1 million Indians turned out to mourn Gandhi's passing, which was also felt worldwide.
A lady travelled for 2 weeks with her son to go and see Gandhi, and he said, okay, how can I help you? He goes, well, I want you to tell my son to stop eating sugar. And he's like, can you come back in 2 weeks? She's like, are you kidding me? I just walked for 2 weeks. So she went away into the village, stayed for 2 weeks, came back 2 weeks later, sat down with Gandhi, and Gandhi said to her son, don't eat sugar. And she's like, why couldn't you have said that 2 weeks ago? He said, 2 weeks ago I was eating sugar. You don't be better leaders by asking better questions, although that helps. Okay, you don't be better leaders by giving great advice, although that helps. You become great leaders by setting and living the example of what it is that you want people to follow. Okay, otherwise it's just paper tigers, and paper tigers get ripped up. Okay, they get screwed up and thrown in the bin.
Now, 4 mandates, 15 years in power. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has led the EU's strongest economy since 2005. She negotiated hard with Greece when it came to their financial crisis, was the only European leader to call on people to welcome refugees, telling her country Wir schaffen das in 2015. Her departure from politics in September is already leading to a lot of questions of who can replace her. 15 years in a job she never imagined doing as a child, having instead gone to study science. Well, a new book about Merkel's childhood and early years has been published here in France. Its author now joins us to bring us her perspective on the Chancellor's earliest years. Marion von Rentergem, thanks so much for your time. Your book, of course, is called C'était Merkel. Lots of anecdotes in the book, lots of lovely pictures as well. Let's maybe start at the beginning and looking at Angela Merkel as a little girl. What kind of things did you learn? What was she like?
As a little girl, she was quite joyful. I mean, and the paradox is that in East Germany, when that you imagine as a which was a dictatorship and a very hard and harsh regime, when you're a child, you build your own world. I mean, you're able to live in sort of a bubble, and she lived in a bubble. She was a very, very good student. Very good in mathematics and she was the daughter of a pastor. You say a pastor. Yep. And so she was strongly educated. She had a Lutheran education in the DDR, in the Democratic Republic of Germany, which was two different worlds altogether, because the communist regime didn't like and didn't appreciate religions. So she was a sort of under control in the dictatorship, but as a very good student and as a very good comrade, she was a very good friend to the other young people. So she played a lot. She had a lot of games in this sort of she lived in the edge, at the edge of the village of the town of Templin in Germany. So they had games together, they studied together, and they were in sort of a second reality. I mean, they were able to ignore a bit what the Stasi meant and what the harsh regime was. They she was happy, paradoxically enough.
And that is what is quite surprising, perhaps, to a lot of us. So, you know, we know about where she grew up and even the fact that her father was a pastor. You think of quite an austere upbringing, but then your book talks about, you know, that she was the envy of everyone for her blue jeans and things like this.
Yeah, yes, because she was a sort of privileged girl because she had family in the West, because she came from the West. This is another paradox of Merkel, is that usually after the war, when the communists settled in and built East Germany, you had many people try to flee and went from east to west. And her own family did the contrary because of the pastor, her father, who was in sympathy with the regime, who was socialist, and who decided to settle in East Germany. So she was born in Hamburg, in the West, and came when she was a little child to the East. So this is very, very unique and special. And since she had still some family in the West, she received some presents like blue jeans, which were very different to the jeans which were made in Germany with bad materials, etc. And so people were nicely jealous of Angela having, you know, dressing like they were in the West. So she was a sort of an idol at the time.
You say that perhaps it's the fact that of her childhood and growing up in the East that maybe was part of the understanding that she was the one European leader, you know, that came out in 2015 and said, "Wir schaffen das, we can do this."
Yeah, I think that she has strongly been built personally and politically by her youth in East Germany, because East Germany, the dictatorship played as a counter model for her. And I think that no leader has more than she has the sense of freedom and the sense of a rule of law. She has it in her genes, really deeply rooted. And I think that when many leaders speak about freedom and democracy and all these concepts, they don't feel it and sense it like she does. And when she says, "Wir schaffen das," and when she has this wonderful attitude, I think she saved the honor of all Europe when she welcomed these refugees, because she knew what it means to be born on the wrong side of a wall. And she saw these hundreds of thousands of people fleeing death and barbarism. And she said, we can't let them like that. And it was really her values and her instinct that spoke for her at the time.
Now, of course, we all know that she studied science in school, and you mentioned there already that she was very good at mathematics. When did the moment come where she flipped into politics?
Only because the wall fell. She was not an opponent to the regime. She was very quiet. As a daughter of a pastor, she was taught to be very cautious and not to be outspoken. She just did her job silently. And, you know, sciences were the only field where you were sure to be not to be looked after by the regime, because they didn't care about sciences. It was not, politics was not in it. So the Stasi didn't come into your things when you studied science. This is the reason why she studied mathematics and physics. And just after the wall fell, she suddenly realized, and some months before, she suddenly realized that something that she couldn't realize and couldn't foresee. She never imagined that the democracy would come in her country. She never imagined that the dictatorship would come to an end. So, and suddenly this wall fell, and she said, I'm interested in this. Is a new world coming out, and I want to be part of it and help Germany to be rebuilt.
And she went right to the top. 15 years running Germany. She went through 4 French presidents. She's seen a few American presidents as well,
exactly.
and various relationships with them. But what do you think Merkel will be remembered for? I believe there's almost a verb now in Germany to Merkel.
I think that she is a moral leader, and which is very rare, because she's structures and she's leading with values more than with strategy. Even though She is very skillful in politics. She's Machiavellic in some ways. She has killed many of her opponents very, very skillfully. But in a way, she is really structured by her values, and this is what brought to Germany the stability that Germans love so much.
Marion van Rentergem, thanks so much for giving us a
Thank you
flavour
for
of your book,
inviting.
C'était Merkel. Is it coming out in English title anytime
I
soon?
hope so.
We'll keep a close eye on it. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you very much.
I am dyslexic, and obviously I was dyslexic when I was at school, and unless I was sitting next to somebody who wrote big, I was hopeless in my exams. You know, and I think that applies to a lot of dyslexics, is you excel at things you can do, and you maybe find other people to do the things you can't do. I did not know the difference between net and gross until I was 50 years old. A very amusing board meeting where I was asking, is that good news or is that bad news, when they told me some figures, and one of the directors took me outside the board meeting and they got a blank piece of paper out and they penciled in a net in the ocean, and they put some fish in the net, and they said, Richard, that the fish that are in the net, that's your profit at the end of the year. And then they penciled in the sea, and that's your turnover, everything that's left over. And I got it, and then I thought, I'm not making as much money as I thought. I thought it was the other way around. But by then, I had the biggest group of private companies in Europe, and it didn't actually matter whether I understood these things. I mean, what matters in business is, you know, can you create an airline that people actually want to fly on? And that's what I'm good at. And so figures, you know, you don't need to be able to know the difference between gross and net to be able to build a virgin